So, welcome to a video about us and our relationship with the Enneagram and our relationship with each other and teaching
Yes.
the Enneagram together.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So I started studying the Enneagram about 30 years ago through the Eureka School. I studied with the Eureka School probably for about 10 years, and Oscar Chazo was the one that created the Eureka School. One of the tools we learned was the Enneagram. So I studied with them for about 10 years and then moved on. I had other teachers and did other spiritual work. My spiritual journey has been a very important part of my life for a very long time. And I've also been a psychotherapist for 30-something years. So about 15 years ago, when I was working with people, I began to realize that I could take them pretty far, and they would reach something that felt like a wall or a deep core knot, an ego core knot, a pattern or something. And as I worked with them, I realized it just reminded me of what I learned with the Enneagram and those patterns. So I started relearning it. I started studying with other teachers and learning it in different ways, and I started using it to work on myself as well, because I had been doing a lot of spiritual work and meditating, and I did psychotherapy for myself for years. And when I started relearning the Enneagram and understanding my own pattern more deeply, I began to be able to open up and shed some of the patterns that I had my entire life. And it was a tool that helped me like no other tool has helped me. Other things have been very valuable too, but this is an important one for me. So at that point, I started teaching the Enneagram once I relearned it, and I wanted to bring it to my clients and other people that really wanted to learn. So I started teaching in 3 parts. At the beginning, I would just present clips of Eli Jackson Bear talking about the Enneagram, and then I would read some notes, and people would try to figure out what their type was. It was very rudimentary, but it developed. It developed into my teaching the Enneagram in 3 parts. I would teach the basic 9 types, and then I would teach subtypes and what is called the movement, and always about releasing and opening and going deeper. And then I would teach a 3rd part, which was the energetics of the Enneagram. And at that point, we all lived in Florida, and I was teaching there. And Tammy came to my very first teaching.
I didn't realize it was your first one, but
Yeah.
so that brings us to about 15 years ago.
I think so, right?
Yeah, about 15 years ago, maybe 16.
Yeah.
So we are mother and daughter. I'm the daughter.
In case you can't tell.
So she began teaching the Enneagram about 15 years ago, and we both lived in Gainesville, Florida at that time. And this is before, I think I was an undergrad. This is before I realized that I wanted to be a counselor. So I was drawn to it, fell in love with it. I have the type 6, tend to be drawn to intellectual side of life. This was a tool that was fascinating to me and very intellectually stimulating. When I realized that I had the type 6, it was pretty groundbreaking for my process. I had also been in psychotherapy at that point and had just began my spiritual journey, and was meditating and interested in enlightenment and awakening, and that understanding my type was a huge awakening and disturbing at first, and so important for my whole process in terms of understanding that a core point is avoiding the energy of fear in my case, but the core points are all avoiding all kinds of life experiences. And so that brought me into the gateways of my process, which had to do with facing fear, feeling fear, experiencing it, working with it, accepting it, loving it, embracing it, and all the other types of energies and emotions that I was avoiding. So dramatically deepened my personal process, and I think it had a lot to do with with me being drawn into becoming a counselor. Going through a dramatic kind of psychological awakening and spiritual awakening at that point in my life brought me into wanting to work with people and share this with people. And so I went into counseling and continued to study initially with my mother. She would do workshops at least once a month, and I was at every single one because I could go, and it didn't cost me anything either. And so
true.
I was just absorbing it, and I went to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of her workshops, and also reading all the literature I could get, and then studying through conferences with other teachers, mostly Western teachers. Here in the States. And so I started using it in my private practice. Well, I went through school, I got a master's degree, started working on a PhD, was working in agencies, and then started a private practice over the years. Started using this in my private practice. I kind of continued it personally for a number of years while I was studying psychodynamic psychotherapy, and was really focused on that. And over time, what I've done is I've brought what has worked for me, I've brought into my work with my clients. And so I couldn't not bring this to my clients. And I started working with them individually, and even in group settings. It was always something that informed me, and I started introducing people to it that way. When I went into full-time private practice a number of years ago, we decided to start teaching together. She was living up here in Asheville, North Carolina. I had just had a baby, and I moved up here also, and we decided to start the Enneagram Center of Asheville. And the first iteration of it was the Bodhi Tree Enneagram Center, which has another significance. We simplified the name for branding, but so it's the Enneagram Center of Asheville. And we have been teaching these year-long cohorts now. There've been, we've done 3, and you did 2 before that. So there've been about 5 year-long cohorts, folks graduating with a certification in, a depth understanding of the Enneagram. But we have developed, you started before we worked together, style.
So I could say a little bit about that. I probably should also self-reveal that I'm a 2. Because since Tammy is talking about her 6, and the 2 pattern has a lot to do with shame and the projection of emotion, and so it helped me understand a lot of that. But what was I talking about?
Our style with the Enneagram.
Oh, yes, the style. Okay, good. Yeah. So where it began, it was a little bit like my therapy style, too. When I would try to understand someone and what they were going through, I would try to embody how they described and expressed what they were feeling. And I would take it into my body and kind of understand it energetically in my body, what they were going through. So naturally, when I was trying to understand all the patterns, I would try to feel what that pattern was like in my body. And I began feeling it and acting it out, demonstrating through my body and my expression how that pattern would express. And I began teaching that. So when Tammy started learning that's what she learned, and we started teaching, we actually have learned so much more about the energetics since we started teaching together.
Yeah, it's incredible. We just teaching the information brought so much to me. And as you know, you learn so much from teaching something. But when you feel the energetic of the type, and you bring it in and you let it impact your movement, and you'll see in our future videos, we'll give you examples, but when you really can feel somatically what these patterns feel like, you get it in a much deeper way. So as an empathic, compassionate kind of counselor, you feel into what your clients are going through. You understand it, but you can also feel it in your system, as another way of understanding. Our intellect is much more than the brain, so you get into the energy, you feel it. So we teach that to our students, and I invite everyone to try this even at home. It's like you feel what the pattern feels like in your body. You have more empathy for it, you have more compassion for it, and you have a much deeper understanding about what it's like to live with this pattern, and also what it might be like to work with it and loosen it up and become more free from it.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing now. Is in Asheville, we have the center, and you can see everything on our website that we're up to right now, and that's our story.
Yeah.
We're both still in private practice, using it in our practices, and then teaching together a couple times a month.
Yes.
Okay.
And thanks.
Thanks.